Hello Internet! Today we're going to learn about data types. What are they? Why are they important? And how to use them. Variables are a prerequisite for this course. If you have not seen it yet, please check our variables tutorial. Without further ado, let's get started. The question is, why data types? Why are they important? Why are we learning about them? One of the fundamental parts of any program is data. In order for the program to understand what to do, why the data provided by the user needs to be formatted in a certain way, we have to tell the computer what to do with that information and how. Data types allow us to explain to the computer what type of data is gathered and how to use it. In other words, data types specify the format of the data. Some examples of some data types include strings, integers, floats, and many others. Let's show some examples of data types. Let's program. Let's open the Python shell and let's start writing a simple program. Let's suppose that we want to create a variable named number. So in this case, we will type number. But the question is, what is a number and what kind of number do we want to use? Let's suppose that we want to insert the number 5. The question will be, what exactly the computer will interpret as the type of number it is. Let's take a look by using the keyword type, and we will type the name of the variable, and we can see that it is interpreting the value 5 as an integer. These three values, int, means that the computer understands that 5 value to be an integer value. Let's try some other things to see if there are other numerical types that Python can interpret. Let's suppose that we want to update the number variable, and in this case, number is going to be 5, but how else could we represent the number 5? Let's suppose that we want to represent 5 as 5.0. What will you predict that will happen next? What type of data will Python interpret in this case? Let's find out. Type number, and if we hit enter, we will find out which data type we will have. In this case, we can see that number is interpreted as a float. As we could see, there are many ways of representing numbers in Python, but it's very important to use the correct type based on the application that we will use. There are many other data types that we could use as well. Let's suppose that we want to ask questions that are logical in nature. Things like whether today is a rainy day or not. In those cases, we will deal with values that are either true or false. Let's type an example. Let's suppose that we want to create a variable named logic, and we want to set logic to true. The question is, what kind of data type logic will be in this context? Let's find out. We enter type logic, and let's hit enter in order for us to find out what kind of data type logic is in this context. We can see that Python interprets this as a boolean type. Boolean types are types that can be either true or false. Those are commonly used for the logic and conditionals of many other programs. We will talk about this in further detail later. In some cases, we might want to represent numbers in different ways. For example, what if we have phone numbers like 512-346? As we could see, even though those values are numbers here, we might have to have a way of entering some alphanumeric characters in the middle of the number. How could we solve this problem? Well, one way to do it is by entering numbers as strings. In this case, the computer does not necessarily interpret that value as a numerical type, but it can be useful when we have some random numbers. Let's suppose that we want to enter the number 5 as text. The question is, if we look for the type of the variable number, what will we find in that case? Let's find out. And we can see that Python interprets that variable as a string. We have to be very careful when we operate with strings, since we cannot do mathematical operations on strings, at least not very easily. Depending on the application, we will use the correct type. We could assign strings to variables by either using the double quotes or the single quotes. Let's try a different example. We will assign the value of 6 to the variable, and let's do type again, and we can see that it's still a string. The main caveat is for us to have consistency on the way that we want to show the strings. Now let's clean our screen and let's deal now with mathematical operators. Now that we're familiar with the concept of data types, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into the mathematical operations that we can perform with some of the numerical data types. In this case, we're going to declare two different variables and we will try to perform some operations on them. Let's suppose that we want to create two variables, one called first number, another one called second number. Let's declare them. First, we're going to declare the initial variable called first number, and that will be equal to 5. Now we are going to create the second variable called second number, and let's make it equal to 7. The question is, how will we add those two variables together? One way to do it is to use the plus sign. So let's declare a third variable called result, and result is going to be equal to the first number plus the second number, and in this case result, and as you could see, our result is equal to 12. So we could see that the result was declared as the addition of the first number and the second number. We could do the same thing with subtraction. Let's make result equal to the second value, second number, minus the initial number, the first number. And if we call the result, it is equal to 2. As you could see, by using the correct data types together with the mathematical operators, we will have a very powerful technique that we will use quite often in our programs. As you practice more exercises, you will become more familiar with all of the concepts presented. There are other mathematical operators, such as multiplication. Let's experiment with multiplication. And in this case, let's multiply the first variable by the second variable. So first number. And in this case, times will be using this sign here. This is the sign for multiplication in Python. First number times the second number. And our result will be 35 in this case. We also have division. We have to be very careful when using division. It is advised that whenever we use division, if we want answers that are precise, that we use floats. So in this case, let's change the values here. So let's make the first variable, first number, equal to 5.0, and let's make the second number equals to 7.0. So if we divide the first number by the second number, we should have a decimal value. So the result will be equal to first number divided by the second number, or in this case 5.0 divided by 7.0. And in this case, our result is a decimal value as we expected. Now let's clean the screen and we will try something else. Now let's try some other operations. So as you could see, we can do some basic operations on the Python shell. 2 plus 2, and it tells us that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. 3 plus 2.0, it's equal to 5.0. Also, if we wanted to multiply 2 times 4, that's 8. But what will happen if we do 2 divided by 5? 0.4. Now, let's suppose that we want to do 2 square. How could we show that? One way to do it is by having 2 two signs of multiplication together, and then 2, and that's equal to 4. If we have 3, raise to the second power, that's 9, and so on and so forth. So with those basic mathematical applications will be enough to get you started at least. We could discuss some other operations later on, but let's create our first program now. What we now will create with the information that you now have, it's a basic calculator. We have created a program that calculates the area of a circle. We already have written the code ahead of time in order to save some time. We will go over the structure of the code. One of the first things that you should do in any program is to write comments that help you understand what the program does. It might take longer for you to understand what the program does if you do not have the proper comments. One of the first things that we did here is to declare the value of pi. We are just using pi up to about 5 decimal places after the decimal point. In this case, that might be good enough. We just want to get an approximation of the value of the area of the circle. We don't want a perfect answer in this case. The second thing that we do here is to explain what the program does to the user. Then when we get some input from the user, we want to get the radius of the circle that we want to calculate the area from. Then we do the calculation. In this case, we have the area that we want to calculate. This is the variable that we are declaring as area. We're taking the value of the radius that we just got from the user. But here, if you pay attention here, you will see that we're casting that radius value from an integer to a float so that we can make the mathematical operations easier on this section. So we're casting the value of the radius, and if you look here, the equation that we're using is pi times the radius square, and that's how we get the area of the circle. Then the result is given to the user as an output here, print, and then we can see the area value. And last but not least, we wait until the user decides to quit the program by just having an input, listening until the user decides to quit. So let's run the program and see what happens. And in this case, let's get this here so you could see. You could see that the first thing that the program does is to explain to us what the program does and how to use it. It's asking us for our input, and if we have the input as 5, it gives us the result as the area. Congratulations! Now you're familiar with data types. Now it's time for our code challenge. In our next code challenge, what you will do is design a similar program that will calculate the area of a square. Remember that in order for you to calculate the area of a square, since all of the sides of the square are going to be equal, you will just square the value of one of the sides, and that should give you the result that you want. Make sure that you go over the video, and if you have any questions, please write them on the description down below. If you like this video, please smash the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye!